As bad as things get in Washington and as badly as they degrade even in Congress, we are not seeing these days a member of Congress beat a U.S. senator with a cane on the Senate floor. That happened on May 22nd, 1856. Senator Charles Sumner was the victim. He was a radical Republican. He was radically opposed to slavery. He was the leader of the abolitionist voices in the United States Senate. Senator Sumner was sitting at his desk in the Senate chamber, alone. He was writing. The chamber was almost empty. There's nobody in the gallery. And 3 Southern pro-slavery congressmen came into the Senate chamber looking for him. 2 of them were to keep anybody else, any observers, any would-be rescuers, from helping out or from interfering in any way. While the other one, without warning, just started smashing Senator Sumner over the head over and over again with the heavy metal end of his cane. It was 2 South Carolina congressmen, 1 Virginia congressman. One of the 2 South Carolina congressmen who actually wielded the cane against Senator Sumner, he kept up that beating for so long, so relentlessly, again, with his friends, keeping anyone from intervening and stopping him. He used that weapon against the unarmed senator to the point where he very nearly beat the senator to death. Senator Sumner did survive, but barely. It took 3 years before he was able to come back to the United States Senate. Senator Sumner was hurt so badly. Today, one of the things that happened at the Capitol to commemorate the January 6th attack last year is that the House hosted the Librarian of Congress, who you see there on your left, and 2 very, very famous historians, who you see at the center on the right of your screen here, to talk about the history of what happened on January 6th, how to make sure that history gets preserved, how to make sure that attack gets told for the purposes of history, how to make sure it gets told accurately in history. And the historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, at that event today, she brought up the caning of Senator Charles Sumner and Preston Brooks, the man who very nearly killed the senator on the floor of the Senate. And she brought it up today in a way that surprised me. She brought it up because of the unique resonance of that violence, that famous act of violence, having happened inside the Capitol. Watch what Doris Kearns Goodwin said today.
I think the chilling thing about the 1850s is when I think of the attack on Senator Sumner, the anti-slavery senator from Massachusetts, by Preston Brooks, the South Carolinian congressman, it happened in the Senate. And because of that, it touched, as one historian said, the hearts and minds of the American people in a way. Lots of other anti-slavery people had been attacked before, but somehow it hit home. And there was a sense in which, for a while, more people joined the Republican Party. Abraham Lincoln joined it after that. The moderates and conservatives realized they had to leave the party structure behind. The Whig Party collapsed. And I thought that was going to happen, that a line had been drawn after January 6th in the same way. Because sometimes these events just touch you, and there's a fundamental sense on the part of the people that something had to change. And we got Abraham Lincoln out of that. The sad, scary part of the 1850s is that Preston Brooks became a hero in the South, that the governor presented him with a silver goblet. People are running around with canes wanting to get other members of the anti-slavery movement. They'll get Seward next, they said. And it was part of that partisanship of the 1850s where you had alternative realities. Indeed, one historian said when you saw that event and you saw 2 alternative narratives, that's when you knew that something was happening to the country. And there's a sense, of course, that there was a partisan press in the 1850s. You know, when Lincoln would be in his debates with Stephen Douglas, and the Republican paper would be reporting on the very same debate that the Democratic Party would be reporting on, when they report on the Lincoln part of it, they say he was so triumphant, he was carried out on the arms of his supporters. You read the Democratic paper, and he fell on the floor. It was so embarrassing that he had to be dragged out by his supporters. So we have some of those parallels from the 1850s, and the only hope will be that, you're right, it ended badly. I mean, obviously it ended badly with the Civil War, but out of that came what had to be done, which was to undo that original sin of slavery. And those people fought for that. We had a leader in Abraham Lincoln who carried us through that. And I think when we look at what happened, that's what you have to remember, that somehow some of these fights have to be fought. But hopefully it doesn't have to end up that way, that we'll know the mistakes we made in the 1850s.
talking about that attack on Charles Sumner back in the 1850s. It happened inside Congress. It happened on the floor of the Senate. Talking about how that fact of it grabbed Americans by the proverbial throat. It was a galvanizing thing. It was horrifying. The barbarity of that attack inside the Congress by those pro-slavery congressmen, it drove Americans to take a clearer side against that than they were previously ready to take. And in that sense, it is, as Doris said, it is part of the story of how we get the leadership of Abraham Lincoln and ultimately the path to the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of slavery. That act of violence, that horrific act of violence in Congress, in the Capitol, galvanizes the country and starts turning history toward what ultimately ends slavery. Because it's so horrifying. But also, on Earth 2, also here in America, the pro-slavery guy gets treated as such a hero. They literally bought him new canes and sent them to him to replace the one that he shattered on the skull of that senator. The pieces of the broken cane that he used to beat Senator Sumner was treated like a religious relic. People wore pieces of it as talismans. The newspapers in the South deified him for nearly murdering the senator that day. They openly wished that Senator Sumner could have been further hurt, that the job could have been finished. That was also the reaction in America. That was 1856, and of course by 1861, America was formally divided into two warring armed factions, and we started killing each other in earnest by the hundreds of thousands. So in ways good and bad, and uplifting and somber, and prayerful and angry and scared today, and all these ways today, there was kind of a unified Earth One response. You know, boy, what happened a year ago today on January 6th was terrible. How do we make sure we don't do that again? But then also today, there's Hillsdale County, Michigan, where tonight the Hillsdale County Republican Party is hosting a fundraiser. They're calling it the Insurrection Anniversary Fundraiser, exclamation point included. They said in their announcement about the Insurrection Anniversary Fundraiser tonight, food and drinks will be provided. We actually spoke with the Hillsdale County, Michigan Republican Party tonight. They told us that they have had to change their plans for this event a little bit. They were planning to have one of the January 6th rioters zoom in to participate in their event, have him join, presumably to give everybody a little lift. Unfortunately, he is facing criminal charges due to his participation in the event, and at the last minute, they told us he decided that he shouldn't be the guest of honor at this Republican Party fundraiser right now. That was today, too. This was the state capitol in the great state of Missouri today. Kind of a big crowd there. This is under the rotunda. You see all the chairs set up in rows. You also can see in another shot here, this guy is gesturing at the big projection screen so you could see his PowerPoint presentation. As I mentioned, this is at the Missouri State Capitol. Under the rotunda, there's the screen you can see where he's got his presentation up there. See what? Can we zoom in, see what that presentation is about there? See what's on the screen? How the 2020 election was stolen. That was the presentation under the rotunda today, at the Missouri State Capitol. St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporting tonight that this event today at the Missouri State Capitol under the rotunda was attended by multiple Republican state legislators. The guy giving the How the Election Was Stolen presentation was formally introduced by Republicans in Missouri today on both the floor of the House and the floor of the Senate. That was the commemoration today of the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. That's how they commemorated it at the Missouri State Capitol today. Missouri Republicans convening underneath the rotunda to give a presentation on how the election was stolen. After the violence at the Capitol just 1 year ago, it's, depending on where you look, it feels like a unified response, but we're not different than what we were in 1856. Like in 1856, we have an Earth One where that was a galvanizing and terrible wake-up call against that horror. We also have an Earth Two where we're not all that horrified by what happened to Senator Charles Sumner. We're happy that Preston Brooks gave him that beating, and frankly, we want more.